60 Minutes Overtime.
This week on 60 Minutes, we did a story about the number of students who didn't come back to school in the fall, who just didn't enroll in school. They're not coming in and they're not logging in. Some of those students may have moved. Their parents may have lost their jobs. They may be in a place where they don't have good internet or they don't have devices. We went to Hillsborough County, Florida, basically Tampa, Florida, and we followed around social workers as they tried to find these kids.
The last door.
Hey, guys, give me a minute. I think I found him.
We met Laura Tucker, who is a social worker with the Hillsborough County School District. This fall, her job wasn't just checking in on kids, it was actually finding them.
Well, we have Joshua, who is 6 years old. We have Mackenzie, who is 7. Antoine is also 7.
They're young. Little.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of little ones.
Are the younger ones more likely to fall through the cracks because they don't have cell phones, or is it just how it is?
Well, I think the younger ones are more at risk because they're more dependent on other people to get them to school.
We know a lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic, and they can't make rent, and that has a real ripple effect on the kids. There is definitely a link between homelessness and children not coming to school. In September, the Centers for Disease Control set this national moratorium that prevented evictions. That moratorium is set to expire, we know, on December 31st. And so Laura Tucker is really fearful that after that, her job is going to become a lot more difficult.
Right now, we've got a country that's about to witness evictions like they've never witnessed before. An eviction can impact a family's ability to rehouse for more than 10 years. So even if you have a good paying job and you have the ability to pay from month to month for your apartment, finding an apartment that will accept you once you have an eviction is almost impossible.
The COVID-19 Eviction Defense Project estimates that when the moratorium expires, millions of people are at risk of being evicted. One of those people is a woman named Charlotte. She has 3 kids, including a baby just born in March. And she said she is really struggling right now to keep up with the rent. Charlotte and her boyfriend both work in the restaurant industry, which obviously has been hit very hard. And she worries that as the pandemic continues, she won't be able to pay her rent, and she's worried about eviction.
My whole plan was, of course, after I had the baby, was to go back to work, and I couldn't because, again, the pandemic, I work in the restaurant industry, so there was no me going back to work. My boyfriend at the time was supporting us because I wasn't working, so he was, doing, it was paycheck by paycheck already. We were already really tight.
Have the hours come back yet?
It's still the same. We're as many servers as we have, we're still fighting for hours. The hours are there kind of, but the money isn't. So we're trying to work as much as we can. You'll have to work double just to make what you used to make.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's not as easy as it used to be. You don't make as much money and people don't have as much money to spend.
Charlotte told us that at one point she was homeless, and so she worries very much about being homeless again.
We're trying to figure out how we can just figure it out and not get evicted and not be put on the street.
The biggest thing is just to have a roof over your head. Have you been homeless before? Yeah. With the kids? And what was that like?
It was scary and I never want to go back that way. I couldn't have that happen.
Where were you guys sleeping when you were homeless?
I was sleeping basically in the back of someone's yard in like a shed. And it was the worst thing I've ever been through and put my kids through.
Because of the pandemic, it is harder for families to find a place to stay. Nobody during a pandemic wants to take in a mom, a dad, their kids, and have them couch surf when you're supposed to be socially distanced. So it's harder now more than ever for these families to just find a place to be. We spoke with Barbara Duffield. She's the executive director of a group called Schoolhouse Connection, which advocates for homeless children.
There's a lot of fear that the numbers that were already at record levels before the pandemic are going to go even higher. And that is terrifying if you think about how many children were homeless before the pandemic. As bad as it is now, it's only likely to get worse unless there's lots of different levels of intervention.
What is the risk if these kids don't re-engage with school soon?
The risk of not being in school and not being connected to school now is a loss of education that could ripple throughout their lifetimes. We know that the single greatest risk factor for experiencing homelessness as a young adult is not having a high school degree or GED. Children missing out on their education now not only puts them at risk for many ills, for lack of employment, for health problems, but it also greatly increases their chances of being homeless when they grow up. So the cycle of homelessness can continue into adulthood.